Hi, my name is Maia Thomas. I'm a founder of BLM Exeter Movement, the Black Lives Matter organisational group in Exeter that hosted the first Black Lives Matter protest in the area with over 1,000 attending, which was a great success. I'll just give you a bit of background into myself, which will delve into deeper why I've been an activist for such a long time and why I felt that I really needed to contribute further to the movement. So I moved to Devon from London when I was about 9 years old, and obviously coming from such a diverse area to Exeter, Devon was a complete culture shock to me, even at such a young age. There were differences I noticed from day one. I no longer saw people that looked like me in my everyday life. I never got to see the foods and the culture that was surrounding me when I did live in London. So life was just completely different when we moved here. I've lived in a few small towns across Devon, such as Budleigh, Exmouth, Lympstone, and other places. And I've experienced similar things in all of them, even before I moved closer to Exeter. Devon has a community which a lot of people resonate with and will mention. When you first hear Devon, a lot of people think, oh, that lovely quiet seaside town, that lovely community which everyone is a part of. But when I moved here, I wasn't part of that community like many others because I was different. In my case, because of my skin colour. I would see people walking around, greeting each other. They'd smile, they would wave, they'd say hello to each other. But if it was me on the pavement coming face to face with another person, I would be stared at. I would be expected to move out the way. I'd be looked at as if I didn't belong in that area, as if I shouldn't be there and didn't have a part there as myself simply because of the colour of my skin. It's hard growing up and seeing a community around you which you long to be part of so much, especially from such a young age. It was hard for me to understand why I wasn't able to be part of that community and why I could see it going on around me, but I was never involved in it myself. So as a young person, that's quite difficult to come to terms with, and that's something that is heartbreaking at that age especially, and that's something that stays with you throughout life. I and my family have experienced different incidences in different towns throughout our time here. We experience everyday racism, which has just become part of our life and something we have had to deal with while we've been here. Even though you speak out, it's still part of your everyday life. It's not always listened to, and it's only now that people have started to want to listen to my experiences, my family's experiences, and many other people of my skin colour and other minorities. Now people finally want to hear what we're going through, and some people are now choosing to believe it, but there's still a lot of people that are saying racism doesn't happen in Devon. Racism is a problem in America and not a problem in the UK, but it is very much here, not just in terms of police brutality, but in terms of everyday racism, institutional racism. It is here, so people really do need to realise that. Some of my experiences included, for example, where we live now, my brother was followed home when he was walking near a bus stop down our lane. He was followed by a woman who refused to believe that we could afford to live in the area. We, based on the colour of our skin, shouldn't be living in this area. So she chose to follow him home up until our driveway because she didn't want to believe that we could live there. Imagine being in the one place you are meant to feel safe, your home, but still having your safety threatened in that one area that you are meant to be relaxed, that you are meant to be yourself. You're meant to feel comfortable and not threatened. But he wasn't even allowed that. We aren't allowed that. We would have worked just as hard as anyone else to live in this area, yet you want to take that away from someone, take away their livelihood and their home just because you don't want to believe that we should be able to live here based on the colour of our skin. There's been other incidences as well. For example, once I was in Debenhams in Exeter, there was a security guard who wasn't in uniform, obviously working in the store. I didn't know at the time. I was looking for perfume for my mum as a gift, as any child, any human being could be looking for a gift for someone. I touched the perfume, I looked at the back, I looked at the box, I was comparing it with other brands and trying to decide which one I should go for. I was testing them, spraying them onto the card as everyone else was doing in the shop. And then in the end, I couldn't find one that she liked. I thought I'd try a different store, so I put them back. When I was walking out the store, I had my headphones in, something everyone's entitled to do. I walked out the store, normal pace, just on my way to another shop. I walked out and turned left. The security guard, I couldn't hear him approaching me, obviously, but he must have been running after me, even though I was walking and I was very young, so he obviously would have caught up with me. Grabbed me here and pushed me against the wall, saying that I'd stolen from the store. You could see directly into my bag. I said, go through my bag. He said, no. They took me back into the shop. He shouted at me, accused me of stealing, but wouldn't go through my bag to check if I actually had anything. So I couldn't understand that. I called my mum after crying, and then from then I didn't really want to go shopping anymore, because who would want to go shopping when you'd have to risk experiencing something like that? No one should have to experience that when they're spending their own money. You're entitled to your own free time to do what you please with it. So I couldn't understand that. It wasn't just experiences like that. There were also experiences within school, another institution, a place where everyone should feel safe. Everyone's entitled to an education, whatever your skin colour, whatever your sexuality. Whoever you choose to be, you're entitled to have an education. I was at this particular school, many schools. This doesn't even apply to one particular school that I've been to. Every school I've been to in Devon has challenged my hair. They've challenged me for having my natural hair out, which is quite kinky afro hair. They've challenged me for having braids like I do now. So I had to change my identity just to have an education, to learn. I knew every day that I went to school that I was just as bright and able as all the pupils there, but I would constantly be challenged about my hair, even though all I wanted to do was learn and get the grades that I needed to move on. But I couldn't do that. There was no scope in the rules for Black people with my particular hair type. The rules didn't fit around different hairstyles that we have. It was all around white hairstyles. But a white girl was allowed to braid her hair, but I wasn't allowed to have my hair in braids. I was constantly confused why I was singled out every single day when I'm just trying to learn and go to school like every other child. Also, my brother, for example, he had his hair short, but apparently his hair was too short. How can your hair be too short? If he's had his hair short like that, why should he have to grow it just because that doesn't fit in with your rules? But then when he did grow his hair, if he did grow his hair into an afro, that also doesn't fit into your rules. So there was no scope for his hairstyle either. Whatever he did, it would be wrong because you hadn't thought about diversity. You hadn't thought that people are different at all. You hadn't made any consideration for that within the rules, which is completely unacceptable. Furthermore, at one school, I also had food thrown at me by pupils in the junior school who said, feed the African, feed the slave. And the school responded to this when I went to them with this just by saying, oh, we're not sending them on the school trip. They can write you a letter of apology. But not sending them on the school trip is an equivalent punishment to doing anything else which is incorrect. They never addressed the racism. The pupils were never told, this is racist. They were never told why what they did was wrong, the consequences of what they've done. They were just given the same punishment as they would be for anything else. So they, in fact, were attempting to shield the children so that they don't have to know about racism and know how deeply wrong what they did was. Instead, they just give them an equivalent punishment to doing anything else and let them go on with their day. That's completely unacceptable. Racism either starts at home in the school, and the school here wasn't living up to their role. From the moment I've been an activist, the years I've been campaigning myself, trying to spread a message, from the moment I became a founder of BLM Exeter movement, I have tried to show how fundamental education, the educational system is to be accountable for racism, and how they need to be making sure that they don't foster an environment where racism is allowed. Education is so important in this aspect. Having Black history and multiculturalism, diversity talked about within schools, not just in one subject, not just for Black History Month. Within everything that we do, remember, Black history is our history. Different minorities' history is our history. You can't just pick and choose which bits of history you wish to listen to and which bits you don't. So these few experiences that I've highlighted are just some of the reasons why it was so important for me to have my voice heard, to allow other Black and other minorities to have their stories told, be listened to, and feel safe while doing so. I just want to speak about what has been achieved since the original Black Lives Matter protest in Exeter, because a lot of people say, you don't achieve anything by protesting. Why are you protesting in coronavirus? How can you be protesting? Just shouting doesn't achieve things. We were never shouting in the first place. Our protest was completely educational. It gave a platform to Black and other minorities to have their voices, their experiences heard by everyone there. They had a safe space and a platform where they could be celebrated, they could be listened to. People could hear what they've had to put up with, yet they're still here fighting today. They're still here speaking out today for other people and for you to be educated. Since the protest, I've been contacted by over 30 schools to go in and conduct workshops myself personally on Black history, the BLM movement, and my contributions as an activist. I'm also working with various schools within their curriculum to see what they can do to have diversity and multiculturalism spoken about, not just in one lesson or not just for 1 month of the year in Black History Month, but to have it woven within what is taught. So it's a constant reminder that Black history and other minorities' history is also our history. We can't pick and choose what history we do want and what history we don't want. We can't wipe out a particular race from history just because it doesn't suit what you want to hear. That's no longer going to be accepted. I will be going into schools to show that despite being a minority and despite the inevitability currently in society that will lead us to be disadvantaged in certain ways, you can still achieve, you can still push and achieve the same, if not more than other people, because I will never use my race as an excuse for not achieving. If anything, it motivates me even more to continue pushing and to continue pushing out and moving further, moving forward, so that other future generations and my generation don't need to continue with this treatment, and we don't need to accept this anymore. We will be speaking out until change is made, and just because you or someone else has had enough of hearing about racism, that's not going to stop us from speaking. I've also done various features with ITV, both online and on the television. I've made a video about racism, which has nearly 17,000 views, which it gained in about a week. I've been speaking out on various platforms. I've worked with Lush, doing a social media takeover twice, where I spoke to their audience about the BLM movement in Exeter, my stance against racism and what I'm doing to stamp out racism in Devon and in society myself. I've been invited to an international conference in Berlin and in another area as well. I've written for public reading rooms, different newspapers. I've had features from Devon Live, Express and Echo, a podcast with Radio X. So it really shows when you put the work in, you will be heard. I I've wrote for a same newspaper that Diane Abbott has also had a feature in. That's something I never knew that I would be able to achieve. But when you put your mind to something and you put your energy in it, you will achieve. And that's what I've wanted to show people, really. So when people say, oh, what did that one protest do? That one protest, as well as all the other protests I've organised, attended and have spoken at, have led to a lot of changes already. And the institutions that contacted me before are still in contact with me now. We're still working and pushing forward to see what more we can do. So it is a movement. It's not a moment. It's not a phase. It's not something that's going away. So be prepared to hear about this and to hear about all the changes for a long time. Furthermore, with this has also come a lot of difficulties. For example, ITV have covered on some of the experiences I've had to endure after being in the public eye as an activist. It's not all been smooth sailing. For example, I've had to have Princess Hay security when I'm working. They've given me a number so that they can escort me to and from work. That happened after the protest, after I faced some specific abuse from that. I receive hundreds of death threats every week, threats to my safety, my family, through messages online, just from speaking out and just from saying that I want equality, because at the end of the day, that's all I've said. All the messages we've said are about changing the institutions, challenging the government, different institutions, and everyday life, so that we can have change and so that we can be treated equally, no matter what your skin colour, no matter what your sexual orientation. It shouldn't affect the way that you're treated and the opportunities that you're given. So that's what I've been campaigning for, but I've still got abuse just for wanting equality. Other abuses all online across my social media profiles. In Exeter, people have been shouting at me in the streets. They've threatened to do things to my family members, my friends. So really now I do have to be a lot more careful when I'm out in Exeter, because although I know that I feel I need to speak out, it does come with a lot of safety issues, but I'm not going to let people scare me into not thinking about this and into not speaking out about this, because that's why we're in this position in the first place, because people are trying to suppress this so that they can carry on being in their position while we carry on being treated the way that we are. So I'm not going to stop speaking out. As well as my experiences in the past, which led me to become so involved in the movement, there's also experiences now since being involved, which only cement further why I needed to be involved in this in the first place. For example, I am also an Instagram influencer with over 51,000 followers, and that has also had a huge impact, and there have also been effects on that part of my life. Since being an activist, various brands have said, oh, we can no longer go ahead with this contract because of your stance on the Black Lives Matter movement. You're coming off too strong and too political, so we can't work with someone like that. Imagine something you've worked so hard for and you've put so many hours into, so much work into growing and building yourself, to be taken away just because you're saying that you want equality in life. It's already hard enough being a Black influencer compared to being a white influencer. There are already various pay gaps between jobs. There's also not that many prominent Black Instagram influencers. So trying to make it in an area where you don't see many people like you yourself anyway, the struggles that has come with and how much harder I've had to work for the same opportunities, for that to now be taken away just because I've decided to speak out against real life experiences is shocking. I've said, instead of speaking to the activists and saying that they're wrong for speaking out, why don't you follow the trail back to the reason why they're speaking out in the first place? Why don't you go back to the business that made them feel that way, the individual that treated them so wrongly that you don't want to hear about it and that you think it's wrong speaking out against that disgusting treatment, why don't these brands go back to that and address that issue instead of taking away opportunities from the minorities that have had to work twice as hard to get them in the first place? There's also been various brands that I've seen capitalizing on the movement, but refusing to make changes within their brand to address the issues that have been raised by the movement. So by that, I would mean, for example, brands are making tops with fists on them, BLM slogans that they've heard, phrases that have come out of the movement, different chants. So they've made t-shirts with that, but then there's no Black model, there's no minorities as models. You're using the same white models to promote a cause about minorities, Black individuals, and different other ethnic minorities struggling. You're capitalizing off that, but not even using or having models or even just people within your business that are a minority. You aren't even supporting the cause by hiring a diverse staff. I really don't understand that. So when people say, is it draining, with all the pressure being on you as an activist and seeing change in society not happening, yet people are capitalizing and making money off a movement which is so serious, yes, that does really hurt. It is draining, and there is a pressure on Black people, especially with the BLM movement. There's a lot of pressure on Black people to speak up and constantly share their experiences to continue the momentum of the movement, else we know it will just fall back into the shadows again and not be considered. Some people have said, oh, but no one put the pressure on you, you've put the pressure on yourself. But if anyone was being treated wrongly, and if you were being made to feel uncomfortable in the area that you live, or if you were being bullied constantly, you would speak out. It's not just about racism, it's about anything. If you were treated wrong, you would speak out. So why should I not speak out when I've been treated wrong every day of my life, when there are instances all the time that I'm singled out and treated wrong? Why should I not speak out? Or why should I face consequences to my livelihood, to my business, because of that? I know various people that are afraid to speak out because they're scared of the repercussions. So they will continue to be treated in a horrible way, which will affect them mentally and physically. But they'll continue to be treated like that just because they can't deal with the further consequences of speaking out, which no one should have to make that choice between mental health and being able to just survive. It's mind-blowing that in 2020, some of us have had to make decisions like this. I've had to make decisions of losing friends over this because they say, oh, all you go on about is the Black Lives Matter movement. All you go on about now is racism, because they're bored of hearing it. But if you're bored of hearing it, make it not happen, and then I won't have to speak about it. It's not that we want to be speaking about this every day. We've spent so long suppressing our emotions. I can't speak for everyone, but a lot of people I know, various different minorities, have spent so long suppressing their emotions and not speaking about it because they know when they do, nothing will happen, or it will be heard on deaf ears. No one will be listening. So therefore, what's the point? But now suddenly with this movement, people do want to listen. So it is a pressure to speak up, and it is a pressure to constantly have to speak up in fear that if you don't, it will be forgotten about again. So although you may not have specifically given the pressure to me, the pressure is there from society. For example, even in Devon, in Exeter, yes, there were a few organisers of the original protest, but since then, have all those people played an active role? I don't know. I can only count for myself and speak for myself and seen how much I've been doing. But have those same people that organised protests? Have those same people that attended protests with banners, have those same people that said sorry for your experience, have they really been there for you and stood up for you when you needed them? Have they taken substantial steps and initiatives? Have they taken positive action, not just performative activism? Are they actually taking steps to change things in society and to change things in various institutions? Or did they just come and hold up a banner and feel that their job was done because it doesn't affect them in the long run? So all of these things, as an activist, even if you're not an activist right now, just as a Black or ethnic minority, any minority individual, you're constantly thinking about these things. You're constantly wondering why we're having to campaign in 2020 for equal treatment, whether it's about sexual orientation, whether it's about race, whether it's about religion. Why do any of us have to campaign to be accepted just based on a difference? Difference should be celebrated. We shouldn't be singling people out because of difference. We should be celebrating the difference together. So as I've said, the pressure should not be on Black individuals. It shouldn't be on any ethnic minorities just to fight to end racism ourselves. Just because you may not experience it as a white individual does not mean that you don't have a part to play in ending something that others are experiencing. I feel as though everyone has a role to play, not just individuals personally, but also the government, schools, universities, different businesses, and as well as you as an individual. There's so much we can do. I've spoke about the pressure that numerous of us have had to feel and do feel, but there's so much people can do as a part of it. A lot of people have said to me, well, what can I do? It's not just about attending protests. A lot of people seem to think that if they attend the protest, that's their job done. You can say that you've done your part, but it's really about what happens beyond the protest. For example, in Exeter, the protest was extremely important, as a lot of people in Devon don't and have said to me that they do not believe racism exists here, and that highlighting it is only going to make it exist here because you're bringing a problem to an area where it wasn't before. This is completely untrue, but based on hearing this so much, that's why the protest in Exeter was so structured around listening to first-hand experiences and letting Black and other minorities have a platform to educate and share their thoughts and what has happened to them with people who may not realise it's been happening here anyway. It was so important that we did that, as it's really shed light on an issue that many of us have known is here, but others have said that they do not know because it's not happening to them. That is not an excuse. For example, in terms of the government, we really do need the government to step up and have a hard line against racism themselves. For example, Boris Johnson saying that we need to stop trying to ignore certain parts of our history and stop being wet really doesn't help when so many people are campaigning for equal treatment. But one of the few things he has said is so negative against what everyone has tried to achieve. Furthermore, the government can really take control over what is in school curriculums, and they can make it essential and compulsory for schools to have Black history in the curriculum and to have conversations, modules on diversity and multiculturalism. They can do that. It shouldn't be up to the school to message me or to message another activist or another group fighting racism to choose whether they want to have it in their school or not. This should be something that is mandatory. I shouldn't even be having to try and convince people that this is necessary. If we can do food tech and learn how to cook meals, how can we not learn to accept people for their differences and learn about different cultures in society? It's absolutely beyond me that people have tried to debate this. Also, in terms of you as an individual and people that you know, you can just start calling people out when something is wrong. If you hear someone being racially abusive to someone or being homophobic, anything you know is wrong, call it out. From now, the only time you should be silent against racism is listening to what I'm saying now, listening to what activists say, listening to what various individuals speak about within their experiences. But apart from that, if you ever hear it, you cannot be silent, because silence is compliance. If you choose to be silent when you hear something is wrong, you're allowing that wrong behavior to be accepted. So therefore, you are part of the wrong behavior and you're contributing to that happening in society. If you don't want to contribute to that, if you do really want to stand up against racism in society, then do your bit. Educate yourself, use free resources like books, YouTube, watch documentaries. If you're a parent, have conversations with your children. Don't let your children be sheltered just because your child may go to a school where there aren't many minorities there. That doesn't mean there are not many minorities in society. It's not an excuse to say, oh, you don't come across this person, so it's okay to not know about this. You can't fully put all your trust and reliance into your employer to give you correct training, although it should be happening. And that is also something I'm campaigning for. You yourself have a role in what you know. It's not just down to one person to educate you on everything. You can play your part. As easy as you watch a football match, you could be watching something on a different culture, or you could be having a conversation about diversity or race, just as easy as you would sit and watch the TV. A lot of different minorities are aggravated by the fact that, yes, you would happily see us in films and laugh at comedies we may be in and eat food from our different cultures and wear the hairstyles when it suits you, but you don't want to accept that person when that is them. You just want to take the features from them and from their culture, make it into your own for you, but then not address them as another equal human being in society. That is not acceptable anymore. Now is the time for you to call people out on this. Now is the time for you to own up to your mistakes, learn from them, and move forward. And when you're moving forward, you can move people with you. You can educate people along the way with you and see how they can change. As I've said, it's not down to one person. It's down to different communities, different groups. It's down to everyone in society to do their bit for this change to happen. So for me, really, to summarise, Black Lives Matter to me is about equality. It's about equality between all races, cultures, genders, sexualities, everything, every human being with a difference. Maybe it's a disability. Whatever your difference is, it should be celebrated and we should all be treated equally. We should all have equal opportunity in all that we do. Our voices should be heard and considered equally. It's about equality in all aspects, equality in job roles, equality in the fact that when one person walks down the street, they shouldn't feel different or singled out because other people aren't willing to accept them for who they are because of whatever this difference may be. And that is what I stand for. I stand for Black Lives Matter in terms of Black history being crucial and fundamental in our educational systems. It is fundamental and it should be compulsory that Black history is a part of our everyday history that we learn about in schools. Black history and history of different minorities shouldn't be wiped out of the curriculum just so we can only celebrate the British Empire or whatever British white history people want to hear about, but they want to ignore how we've come to have this history and all the different minorities which may have played a part in it. That's why education is so crucial in all my aims. I will continue going into these 30 schools and pushing to go into even more schools across Devon. I'll continue to speak out when something is wrong, and I hope that you watching this and anyone else who may see this, anyone else you may speak to, will continue to challenge things when they're wrong. I hope that people will continue to use whatever privilege they have, whether that is because of your skin colour, maybe you are white, or maybe you're in a job role where you can have an impact on the making of the staff and how diverse it is. Maybe you're in a position where you can go to someone and your voice will be heard, so you can help implement these changes. Everyone can take a stand. If we all challenge employers, businesses, and different institutions when we know that they're wrong, then change will be made. But if we continue to sit back, continue to have our feelings brushed aside, continue to just let the world continue in the way that it is this really a world in which we want to live, in which we want future generations to live, in what we want to bring up our families, children, share friendships in, make connections, be with loved ones in? Is this really a world that we're happy with? And if the answer is no, and it really should be no, what are you going to do about it? Because that's what the question is. It's not about sympathy. None of us are here because we want you to say, oh, I'm sorry this has happened. I don't need an apology countless of times from people for things I've had to endure for years. Racism will continue whether the media reports on it or not, and it's not my job to keep racism a topical subject for you so that you or your friends will actually remember that it's still going on. It will be here whether the media report on it or not, whether Black Lives Matter is so prominent in the news or not. People will still face everyday and institutionalized racism regardless of this fact. So I really need you and anyone else that you can spread the message to think, what can you do on your part? Because I'm doing my part. So many activists are doing their part. So many everyday people are doing their part just by having to constantly relive and share experiences which they have tried to suppress for years, just so that they're not emotionally drained all the time. But we need everyone to come together on this. So it's about thinking, now you've heard all of this, what can you do? There's so much that can be done, as I've mentioned, and everyone really has a really, really important role to play. As I've said before, I want to highlight that this isn't for sympathy. I will never use my race as an excuse. All it does is motivate me to achieve every single day. But not everyone does feel like that, and not everyone is strong enough to use it as a motivator. Some people, it will get to them and it will break them down, and differences will make them feel uncomfortable in life, and no one should have to go through that. Whether you're strong enough or not, you shouldn't have to build yourself up to be resilient against something which could easily be stopped. Black Lives Matter movement is so important to me, and I'm sure everyone here watching this, equality means something to you. So if you stand for equality, you should stand for this in the sense that I do, and you should want to speak out and push for change in the same sense that I do, and I will continue to do so. For a long time, I tried to change who I am physically and mentally to fit into a world that is so fundamentally flawed. I tried to change my heritage. I tried to adapt myself so that I wouldn't be treated differently. I tried to change my hair. I would straighten my afro hair because otherwise I was afraid that I would either be pestered by schools and different institutions, or I would constantly have people not leaving me alone because they needed to touch my hair as they've not seen that type of hair type before. So for me, I became a victim for them wanting to do something which may benefit them, but really it made me feel really uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to eat the food that I would eat at home in school in my packed lunch in fear that people would say that it smelled and it's not normal and it's different to what they eat. So I would eat things that I didn't want to eat just to have more of a comfortable lifestyle. I wouldn't speak up before because I've been told that I'm rude, I'm aggressive, I'm too outspoken. But then on the other hand, I've been told, oh, I didn't expect you to speak so eloquently for a black girl. I didn't expect you to come across the way that you do, so well mannered. I've had people say, oh, I bet the media loves a well spoken black. And that's the only reason that I've had attention within this movement, because I've outdone the expectation of a black woman in terms of the way that I speak, apparently. I wouldn't speak up because I knew that at the end of the day, if the police were called and the matter turned more expressive and I couldn't speak calmly, who would be the one that would lose in that situation? Often it would be me, because I wouldn't be believed because of the perception people have in society of us. That's not fair. And I've come to a point where I've realized that I'm not going to change myself anymore for a society which is flawed within itself. No one should have to change themselves for society, flawed or not. We don't need to change who we are. We need to continue being different, celebrate our own differences within ourselves, celebrate them with our friends, our family, and celebrate them outwardly so people can see that just because you don't like the differences doesn't mean we're going to hide them, and it doesn't mean we're going to filter into the background so you don't have to see these differences or celebrate them themselves. Regardless of your opinion, we'll continue to celebrate and love ourselves for who we are. Self-love is so important, and that is one really good thing the movement has brought out, because it's made a lot of people realize that they can love themselves no matter what people say, and that a lot of people are going through similar experiences, and we've got people that we can rely on and talk to. But if you do want to be an ally, please make sure that you're an ally for the right reasons. You're not just in it for performative activism. You're not just coming along to a protest to take a photo of your banner and feeling your job's done. You need to be there for people from day one when they call on you to go and challenge that business or institution. Be there for them because you've given them your support. So don't take it away when people need it most. I hope everyone can celebrate their differences who's listening to this. I hope everyone loves themselves and will continue to fight to be themselves and to be accepted for being themselves, because that is so important. To see any more of my work, feel free to check out my Facebook, which is Maia Thomas, spelled M-A-I-A. My Instagram, which is Black Angel X, which is BLVCK.AngelX. Our Facebook page is also BLM Exeter Movement, where we post everything that is going on within the movement in Devon and what we're trying to achieve. And also my LinkedIn, which is again Maia Thomas. Thank you so much. Appreciate your difference. Support equality, stand up against racism, and love yourself for who you are.